Hey, everybody. Before we get to this episode, I want to share something about Sponsor CX. Here's the deal. I've been working in and around sponsorship for almost 30 years. And in those many years, I've seen teams and leagues and others really struggle with this super important revenue stream. That's because keeping your sales pipeline organized, your partner activations going, and your reporting all in sync for a bunch of partners can be brutal. Fortunately, that's where Sponsor CX comes in. And Sponsor CX is designed by experienced sponsorship pros, so you know they completely understand what's needed to succeed. With extensive capabilities, a simple to use interface, and built in flexibility, Sponsor CX is the answer your sponsorship team has been waiting for to bring some order to the chaos that can be their jobs. But don't take my word for it. See for yourself. Head over to sponsorcx.com/podcast and click the request demo button in the upper right and let them know you heard about it on this podcast. You'll see pretty quick how Sponsor CX will supercharge your sponsorship team.
Hi, this is Mark Keaney, Chief Revenue Officer for Greenfly, and I'm going one-on-one today with ABC Partners.
Hey, this is Dave Almy of ADC Partners, and many thanks for stopping by to check out this latest episode of the One-on-One Sports Business Conversations podcast. Now, the other day, I was looking at all the digital photos and videos I've stored over the years, and let me tell you, I was a little overwhelmed. I bet you kind of know what I'm talking about, right? You know, you get things stored in different places, things aren't categorized correctly. I mean, it's a total mess. Now, imagine what that would be like if you're doing it for hundreds of thousands of people. Now, you just throw up in your mouth a little bit. Yeah, that's kind of what I did. But that's what sports teams are dealing with right now. Think about all the photos, videos, and other forms of content that are generated about leagues, teams, and players on a daily basis. Hell, on an hourly basis. It's pretty staggering, right? Well, that's where Mark Keaney and Greenfly come in. Greenfly shows teams not only how to organize all that content, but also how they can use it to effectively connect with and engage their fans. Using media effectively is nothing new to Mark. He's got a long history in the industry. In our conversation, we talk about the changing role of media in sports, what he's seeing in terms of best practices for using user-generated content, how established teams and leagues are actually looking to the upstarts for advice on using new media and content, and much more. I hope you'll also take time to listen all the way through because I promise you'll also be inspired by Mark's 7 a.m. project. Just one other thing, please note that there is one moment of foul language in this episode, but that's to be expected when two guys who grew up near Boston get together. It's just the way it works. So thanks for listening to this conversation with Mark Keaney, the Chief Revenue Officer of Greenfly. Hope you enjoy. Mark, let's begin just by doing a quick review of your media and sales background because there's some history here. You've worked for a number of companies in this particular vertical, and I'm really interested, just to sort of set the foundation here, is when you think back to what you learned as an account manager for iHeartRadio and
Right.
what you're doing today as CRO of Greenfly. Where are the commonalities and what have you learned along the way that really impact you today?
Man, that's an awesome question, and that kind of goes way back in the way back machine there. But I think when you first said the question, I literally said I'm doing the exact same thing that I've always been doing,
Yeah,
right?
right.
And I really did have the benefit early on. Like I got out of college, I got into sales, I sold mailing and shipping equipment for about 9 months, and I was miserable. And
It's hard to imagine why.
And someone said, you've got great sales talent, but you need to sell something that you believe in
Really
and
care about.
you're interested in. And a friend of mine worked at Kiss 108 in Boston, which was a big
Hmm.
radio station, and there was a job opening, and I interviewed for the job, and I was sort of off to the races. I was successful immediately, and I'll say there were two things about that experience that kind of take me into where I am right now at Greenfly is that I really loved what I did. I was so passionate about the relationship between our customers and the benefit they got from advertising the right way on media. It was just awesome. I had so much fun doing it. So that passion translated, and I feel I have the same energy right now at Greenfly. The second thing, and this just came from like keeping my ears open and having some good mentors, is we weren't necessarily selling radio. We were consulting on how you could, build the right advertising program to deliver outcomes for your business. So we were taught at a young age of selling, of like, you got to ask the right questions, you got to keep your ears open. And I think now we just came from a great meeting. I'm in New York for the day, and we just came from this meeting, and I stopped down midway through because we were kind of talking too much, and I just asked the right question. And I wanted to understand like the big challenges and the big goals that this particular customer had. And it almost took me back, 25 years. And the gold was in the answers because we actually do what this guy needs us to do. We could map our solution to his problem, and that's where the action happens.
It's so, I hate to say this, but it's so trite, but so true
Right.
from the standpoint of you talked about the passion you need to feel when you're selling
Right.
and you caring about that because your customers pick up on that.
Right.
If you're mailing it in, they're gonna mail it in.
Right.
The other thing, and thank God, it's so valuable for people listening to hear that comment about, hey man, we're talking too much.
Right.
We're trying to sell versus trying to listen. And like that simple thing is the
Yeah.
foundation of all effective sales, right? I mean, that's how people build careers in this particular part of the world.
Right. That's exactly right.
So talk a little bit about the evolution of content because that's Greenfly right now, and that's where you're really focused on. And you talked about being at Kiss 108 in Boston, and it was just called radio back then, or it was just called audio, right? And
Yeah.
now we've got this larger category known as content. And similar to the first question, as you think back to how you started in media and
Yeah.
how the idea of content has changed, how do you define it now? And how are companies that you're selling to interacting with it and the priorities associated with it?
Yeah. That is a great question. It coming up in the media industry in the 90s,
Yeah,
right? Another century, but coming up in the media business,
literally.
kind of a cliche that we said that content is king.
Right.
And it was all about like having the right content for the right audience. The advantage we had at the time in we whether it was television or radio or even newspaper, but like you had sort of this mindset of appointment, listening, viewing. So must see TV on Thursday nights, Seinfeld. That was a destination that we talked about on Friday morning around the water cooler, right? So that's kind of the old world of content. And I think when you think about the early 2000s, the internet changed everything.
Sure.
Google gave us the ability to find whatever we want when we wanted it. That was complemented by the on-demand world where you could now get content on demand. But then something interesting happened. Social media, Facebook was launched in the early 2000s, right before the iPhone, put all of that searchability and connectivity into the power of our hands. And now we could really see and participate in content whatever we wanted, whenever we wanted. So I think now when we think about content, in Greenfly in particular, we are in the short form content business. Our goal is to be core infrastructure to help, large scale sports organizations and entertainment companies deliver short form content across any channel. And I think that what we're helping our customers do, and this is the difference between what was once appointment television, for example, is we're helping our customers become cross-channel storytellers, where they are basically taking that 30-minute show and they're creating content alongside of it so that the show can live on Thursday night, but can be replayed on demand, but they can connect with fans on YouTube and also social in a variety of different ways with shareability and expandability to build that audience size.
You've talked about like there's this immediacy now, right? If I want to watch something, I'm going to watch it. It's like,
Right.
back in the Seinfeld days and must see TV on Thursday nights, it was, only 26 hours to go. And I know some
Right.
people are listening to this right now going like, "Oh my God, it's like, dinosaurs roamed the earth."
Yeah.
But that coincides with, I mean, there's no bigger consumer of content than a sports fan, right?
Right.
And their expectations have changed dramatically very, very quickly that coincided with all this, like the device in the pocket and the means with which to find anything you want. Was that, I mean, there's a kind of a chicken and egg quality to this kind of question, right? I mean, did the sports fan drive that need, or did sports companies and properties and media start saying, hey, let's deliver up different kinds of content and see what sticks?
Yeah. Well, another, these are great questions.
So I got a great question generator on AI, so we're going to use that thing.
I'm going to say a positive and negative about media, like old media
Okay.
things. Right? And
Yeah.
the negative, and I remember in the early 2000s, like I knew that Spotify and Apple Music was about to destroy radio as I knew it, but I
Okay.
couldn't get people above me to kind of like connect to that. I was
Yeah.
like, there's something coming. And I think that was kind of like that was the darkest day. That was like the dumb old thinking. I think the new world thinking, when you think about the best of media, media people are very sophisticated and savvy at understanding the need to deliver to the audience,
Mm-hmm.
right? Stand,
What are they
you know,
clamoring for?
and so to the sports question specifically, I think that your big giant sports brand, the NFL, right? MLB, NHL, PGA, like these, they know their audience. And one of the things that they've noticed over time, or really, seen firsthand, is that it's hard to attract that younger audience of traditional broadcast viewer. So that Gen Z, Gen Y, millennial consumer that they were having a hard time bringing into, okay, there's a game on every night at 7 o'clock for Major League Baseball. Like, let me listen to it on the radio and then watch it when I get home. They knew they needed a way to bring those fans back into the game. And it was a combination of like, okay, we might lose some viewership to the traditional broadcast, but let's expand the audience to drive merchandise sales, to drive ticket sales, and to drive fandom. So what you're seeing is that the ability to not only take, highlight clips are like the kind of like the foundation, right? You get these
Mm-hmm.
great highlights that are happening in real time. But what we've seen is the evolution of what we call live content capture. So
Okay.
the ability of having like almost like sideline, social media reporters, having, influencers in stadium, capturing moments that, and I knew you're going to ask about AI later, but capturing moments that good technology and AI can find and pull in and leverage in real time. You get a kid sitting in a bar, you get a person that's away at college, they're experiencing Fenway Park firsthand. They're just not there and they're not watching the broadcast feed, but it expands the audience. And when you have a bigger audience, you can put commercials in front of them, you can put merchandise opportunities in front of them, you can sell hats.
I think you see also sports leagues and teams starting to look at the fundamental nature of the games they're playing. I mean, and the thing that immediately pops to mind is the pitch clock in baseball, right?
Yeah.
There was an absolute recognition that there was something that needed to happen in order to make the game more compelling for younger fans who were, the thinking goes, less inclined to sit down for 3.5 hours and watch the game. And the result has been pretty phenomenal. Do you feel like short form media helped train the leagues to prepare for that moment? Was that pretty wrapped up in the two?
100%. And
Okay.
ironically, at a cross street in Manhattan yesterday, I was talking with the MLB. We were walking back to their offices from lunch. We were talking about the pitch count. And the guy I was talking to basically said, he's like, I was at a bar the other night and we were ready to leave. And it was like one out left in the inning. And I knew with the pitch count that I could actually watch it right here. I didn't have to wait. Like I could finish the inning and then essentially I could pick up Twitter, my like kind of live feed from the game. So I think there is a parallel between how they think about packaging the product and then the delivery points. Again, that kind of cross-channel storytelling. It's like you're making a better product for the viewer, but that viewer is watching it in different ways. They're not sitting on a couch, right? They might be watching it on demand. They might be recording it with a DVR. They might be in a bar like this, catching a third of the game, but then picking up on a live stream feed on Twitter on the way home.
It is amazingly stitching together all these different experiences into, it really allows a consumer to consume boy, there's just getting a little redundant, to like really take in these games in the way that they want. I mean, ultimately, it goes right back to the beginning of the conversation that we just had. How
Yeah.
are we listening to our consumer and providing them with a product that's going to solve the challenge that they find? And so, with that in mind, you touched a little bit on it earlier, but can you break down Greenfly? So when you think about like the conversation you just said, you're out with Major League Baseball, you're walking down the street. When you think about their challenges and what they're telling you they're trying to do, where does Greenfly slide in to try to help them with those? With I mean, it's just the idea of content is so huge. So
Yeah.
how do you help them
Yeah.
deliver on that?
I'm going to use one word and kind of a simple word. It's just organizationally, or we help them organize all of the different mechanisms of content that are available to them in real time.
Yeah,
And I can lens out for a second. That we work with every major league in the US. We work with most major leagues worldwide. We just had our first foray into the college market with the Big Ten at the conference level. And the reason I frame it like that and bring the Big Ten into the conversation is that everyone has the same problem. There is no shortage of incredible content that is being created in real time from the actual broadcast feed that is broken down in the clips. And now you've got these great clips and highlights from social media reporters and live content creators in stadium, from fan UGC. And then also when you think about archival content, so big moments in sports that happen, you got all these different content sources that if you're talking MLB or you're talking Big Ten, they live in a variety of different places, and
yeah.
sometimes they live on someone's phone. What Greenfly does is we have the ability to bring all of those content sources into our infrastructure, this kind of core infrastructure model, all this content from a variety of different inputs, including Getty images, including broadcast clips, including the live content capture. All of it comes in. And with the help of AI, it is organized. So at the league level, it's organized by team and by player. It might be organized by a sponsor, by brand, could be organized by action. So touchdown, home run, grand slam, all of that is organized in a way that the endpoints, the outputs, can have it delivered to them directly in real time. And a player can share it from their phone, from their mobile device. Or I was at the US Open and the NBC Sports was also, they work with Premier League. They were getting live content from the Premier League distributed to their broadcast feed from Greenfly. So it's that intersection of all that content. Because the value of content, when you think about short form content, it's real time. And Caitlin Clark breaks the record, the first record of many records, but when she breaks it happening in real time, a tweet about that 3 days later is not as powerful and valuable as it's happening right in the moment. And we have the ability to basically take that moment in an almost near real time.
That's the differentiator here because you are talking about it's almost hard to imagine the volume of content that's produced. I think, as old school guys, we're used to growing up with, well, there's the high up camera angle and, there's that camera angle. We get basically waited for the producer in the truck to change it. But you're now talking about a day when a 60,000 seat stadium has 60,000 different camera views
Right.
and having to stitch that all together. So it's a volume equation and it's an immediate equation as far
Yeah,
as how to help these sports organizations deal this onslaught of information coming their way.
correct.
How do
That
they respond to it? Like when you come to them, can you break that down of what their perception of it is and the need to provide, for lack of a better term, I've heard it used this quite like that bite-sized content. I mean, their revenue has traditionally been built on big, large form media deals. And you spoke a little bit about it earlier, like, are we going to sacrifice some of our audience associated with that? Do you have to break through a certain amount of they feel threatened by this, or has it come a long way?
it's funny with each quarter, and I would break my life down into quarters. Every quarter, it becomes more and more urgent that this is the thing, right?
Yeah.
Like we went back, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 3 years ago. I think that like having, back then, if you go back in time 10 years, it might have been we need to have a Facebook page.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
social strategy. We need to put some pictures up on social media. And the thought of using video highlights, well, that takes away from the plays of the week, right? That takes away from the broadcast feed. I would say that 99% of the time, the conversations we're having with different parts of the organization, whether we're talking to the chief revenue officer of a major league, or we're talking to the head of digital content, or broadcast, right? Basically, when you think of this platform, I kind of explain the inputs, right? The content's coming in
Yep.
from all places. The outputs are where it gets really interesting, where we essentially feed the broadcasters, we feed the sponsors, we feed the partner ecosystem, we feed the social media feeds at the team level and at the player level. So when you think about the broadcast piece, interesting example, but at the US Open a year ago, Scheffler had a sand trap a shot that was unbelievable. I think it was on the 13th hole. I might be making that up, but the camera angles only really could catch the top of his club. There was no one capturing the actual live shot itself, except this. You could see the sand iron come up, and you see the after effects of it almost holing out. But there was a piece of fan content that would happen to be captured right behind the trap. And within 15 minutes, we were able to get that to the broadcaster, and they created an interesting moment of vertical video transposed into a live broadcast. And it's just the magic of, like, you know what, cross-channel storytelling, right? And so you think about some of the benefit. It could drive tune in, it could drive fan engagement. We could attach a sponsor to that. Like, all of a sudden, it's like building audience, building revenue. Short form content is a big part of what we need to do today and moving forward.
And I think you also touch upon, I mean, people sometimes forget. I mean, this is a sports business podcast. So most of the people who are listening to this is going to seem like a stupid statement to make. But you forget sometimes that sports organizations are money-making machines, right? They're in the entertainment business, and, it's, the game on the field is, certainly entertaining, and it's compelling, and it's emotional, and all the things that go along with that. But every organization is always looking for what's the next way to generate revenue. How can we pull more dollars from a fan, from a sponsor, from a media partner to generate the income that we need to compete with our peers? And you're kind of opening up a whole new door for them. It's just a new product, though, and maybe having a sense of how to sell it, how to monetize it was new. Do you assist them with that part of this equation, or is that, here's the content, go at it?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think that is that. So the short answer is yes.
Yeah.
And I think a big part of it is we've got, a great customer success organization that provides a level of strategic service as well, and best practices and that sort of thing. I think from a business perspective, we as a company are actually starting to move into that strategic services
Yeah.
model. We're not necessarily going to teach the NFL to do something better than the NFL is doing today.
And you'll certainly never tell them that you will.
Yeah, right. But we work with some amazing leagues like PWHL, Professional Women's Hockey League, first year, not only as a league, but first year with Greenfly. And we're thinking about, in what ways can we take the knowledge gained from working with the bigs and look at some of our our mid-tier leagues and newer leagues and say, okay, here are three things that we can help you do. Let's go in business together and work together on that specifically. And because a lot of these guys are undermanned.
Do you think that newer leagues, you just brought up the PWHL and like the Major League Lacrosse, because they're new and they're not quote unquote burdened by legacy media and those requirements, do they actually almost have an advantage in this? Yeah, they may have only a two-person shop to help drive this kind of stuff, but because they're able to create this in this moment versus having 45 years of stuff they also have to tag along with this, is there an advantage for them there in dealing with how consumers want this stuff?
I think that is an astute call out, because ironically you say that, and I've actually been asked by a couple big leagues, like, hey, what are they doing? I think there's a little bit to that. I think that
Yeah,
there's almost like they've got a clean whiteboard,
yeah,
right? I think that they know that they're going to have, lesser, like their broadcast deals, and that opportunity is going to be lesser of an opportunity of growth for them in the near term. So how do they build audience beyond that? And I think PWHL had an amazing year this year. Like,
yeah, they
just
did.
1 second. And I think when you look at their ticket sales, it was incredible. The amount of coverage, the broadcast tune, and everything was great. But I think a big part of what they needed to do that is they needed to create a small but mighty PR machine, and the loudest voice really is social. So
Mm.
the ability to get all of their players leveraging content, which they do through Greenfly, right? So you got like one of the pieces of that we call player distribution, where you get every single player within a league or on a team that has the Greenfly app and is getting content sourced for them that is either promotional on the league's behalf. So here's some your ticket sale information. Here's a great highlight video of our season, that sort of stuff. Or it's content that's specifically routed to them that might be their highlights or their promotional videos, and they get it on their phone and in real time. They just select, I'm going to share this. Here's the social network. Click on Twitter, click on Instagram, instantly posted.
Yeah, and it allows them to flood the zone, allows a two-person marketing department to flood the zone with content, right? So you can push out so much because of all the tools that you're bringing. You take what used to be, Jesus, man, I
Exactly
like
right.
30 people, and now you can like hone it down to two, and they can just make sure that a new league, which traditionally has struggled to break through the clutter of the sports landscape, can now be anywhere at any time with everything, with the moments that are compelling that
Yeah.
was always hard to reach anybody with because it just were invisible. It's just not the case anymore.
One other piece of that that again, and not that we have too many arms and legs, but I think we have the right amount of arms and legs as a platform. Like there's a lot of elements to it.
Yeah.
I covered the input and the output, all those different things. One element that I've not really brought into the conversation that most of our customers are getting great use out of, but it's the amplification of voice, is what we call Engage, which is a tool that allows them to aggregate fan UGC in real time. So when you think of user-generated content or fan content, you would have to mine social media, and find Mike from Boston who loves the Celtics. You grab his post, but then you got to ask him permission to repurpose that content. Engage essentially allows a league like PWHL to do a campaign around the playoffs. So they push it out on their social channels, they push it on their website, asking fans to upload a video into this little microsite. Thousands of people enter, and then they've got this great content they repackage and push out on their social channels. Now you bring the fans into the conversation, right? Total amplification of voice.
I mean, it's kind of amazing to think about because teams have been running contests forever, right? And the
Right.
intent was how do we capture that fan's information so
Yep.
that we can get them into our ecosystem and sell them to our products and everything like that. And yes, that's always going to be an important thing, and it's always going to be part of what sports teams do. But now to think that the content these fans generate has equal value to who those fans are to help them tell the story is actually some pretty progressive thinking on the part of a lot of sports teams who
Totally.
tend to be pretty dot to dot as far as revenue. Like if I do this thing, I want that thing. To have
Yeah.
that idea of, hey man, we can build revenue off of this thing that the fans are providing for us in their personal viewpoint,
Yeah.
which is where it really starts to get interesting.
I'll send you some examples of this too, because the videos are amazing. But
I can't even imagine.
the asterisk is that the campaign is a clearinghouse. So we want you to give us content. When you agree to give us content, you give us the rights to use it,
Right.
and we can use it any way we see fit, including commercially. So did a great program with Big Ten around Caitlin Clark's first record. And in that campaign, like send in your fan video, all these awesome, kids, grandparents, women who played 30 years ago, fun videos. And they made a montage video celebrating Caitlin in her biggest moment, presented by State Farm,
Oh
right?
yeah.
So you got the commercialization piece and the rights to do it. But at the end of the day, as much as it was a huge value to State Farm and a nice win for the conference from a commercialization standpoint, at the end of the day, all the fans got was this immersion in Caitlin's big moment and big night. And that's kind of awesome.
We talk so much about sports and why it's effective for partners, particularly on the corporate side, because it generates emotion. And I think what you just described there realizes that in a unique and compelling way, right? Because it literally takes the emotion of the fans and bakes it into, for lack of a better term, a product that people can engage with, that
Right.
sponsors can touch, that teams can then shop and things like that. But it's like distilled pure stuff versus, hey, look, we made a sizzle reel and it's kind of manufactured and things like that. This is Yeah, how many times you've heard the word authenticity thrown around in the last 10 years, but this sort of what Greenfly is doing really allows for that to take place by accessing those kinds of video.
Right.
You've brought up the Big Ten. We've
Yeah.
talked about the PWHL and talked about organizations that are doing unique and compelling things. What else stands out to you as organizations that are really being effective in how they use Greenfly and short form content? What makes them effective, and what can other teams learn from them?
One of our first, so we're going to talk about AI, I'm assuming at some point,
Yeah,
right?
that's
Uh,
literally queued up.
oh, perfect. We acquired a company a year ago that we did our homework and felt like we found one of the best in class AI companies specifically for sports, and I'll get into why after. But the NHL has really done an incredible job in the digital space at kind of bringing them like catching up, if you will, to the NBA, to the NHL, like to the NFL rather. You've got when I think of NBA and NFL, you get these really mature digital brands, and NHL is just different, right? You've got these sort of blue collar hockey player guys, like they don't love social, like they're just different. They're not the, it's not the NBA, it's not the
They are
NFL.
different.
But they were able to build an incredible program with the help of Greenfly using AI and doing a player sharing program. So they've got this awesome live content capture happening in stadium, and that content is being shared in real time with the help of AI to specific players and their handlers. And that is being leveraged across social channels, kind of like instantly. So it's kind of taking the emotion of like, a 28 seat stadium, a 28,000 seat stadium, and the fun that you have in stadium, bringing it to life in real time and engaging true hockey fans at scale. We happen to, I say we, in partnership with the NHL, we won a Clio Award for that innovation in AI for short form content this past year. So that's someone that I think, when I highlight them specifically, I think that their CMO and their organization did a really smart job at looking at where they needed to move the puck, and they did that. Like
You got to skate to where the puck is going to be, man, not where it is.
I think that's one of those things. If you looked at them 3 to 5 years ago, where like that was the challenge, right? Like moving them forward at the speed of social, and I think they're a great example of a brand that's done a great job with that.
Does all this new technology allow leagues that, and I hate to use this for the NHL, so hockey fans just no notes in the comments, please. The NHL has always sort of been the big three and the NHL, right?
Yeah,
But
right.
with new technology coming so quickly and changes happening so fast, does this moment allow, we kind of touched on it earlier with the smaller leagues, but it does allow them to kind of, if we can just look a little bit ahead, it does allow you to get out ahead of where the market may move a little bit and allows you to play a little bit catch up like the NHL did, the example that you just pointed out.
I think that's real. I think that's dead on. And it's funny because growing up, we talked about Boston. Like growing up in Boston, you're kind of that is a strong hockey market. Like you kind
Hmm.
of got a hockey fan from the Northeast, but you've got the Patriots, you've got the Red Sox, you've got the Celtics. So it's always been a 3-1 sort of thing, right? Like in terms of fandom. I think I think this year in particular, the playoffs for hockey were awesome. I had the opportunity to be a guest at the NHL All Star game, and it not only felt like the celebrity of like an NBA All Star game, like it felt like a celebrity event, like it was, but it also was an incredible hockey event and an
Mm.
incredible event. They're doing a lot to sort of bring into the community because I think for
It had
like
all the vibes.
a lot of sports, you think of basketball, or soccer is a great example. You give a group of kids a ball on a field and they can play soccer. But playing ice hockey, you've got a lot of gear. And one of the things I think that the
And ice time is so cheap, as any hockey parent will ever tell you.
yeah, 4 in the morning. There you go.
Hey,
Yeah. Hey, but I think this year, like they're embracing street hockey, kind of following with flag football,
yep.
like taking that model of like. So I think this is going to be the emergence of a big four. I think we're right there.
All right, so let's have the AI question. let's talk about it specifically as because it's changing everything. I mean, every conversation I have. I mean, I can have a conversation with a concessionaire who's developing a new kind of hot dog and using AIs to figure out how to get the snouts in it or
Yeah,
something like that. It's in
yeah,
everything we do. I mean, but particularly for technology companies, particularly for those who are dealing with the volume of content that Greenfly is helping generate. It is going to be fundamental in how it changes everything that sports organizations are looking at, from the Moneyball type stuff to the business operations type stuff. So, from your perspective, when you look at Greenfly and content and artificial intelligence, what excites you about what you're doing with it right now, and where do you think the potential of that can head?
yeah.
Boy,
It's great.
there's a tough question right there.
Yeah. Well, it changes every, yeah, again, like I always
Yeah.
live in, but like it changes daily with AI. I think the only limitation on AI is just the world is trying to figure out how to put restrictions around it. Like how do you, privacy and those type of considerations. For content, short form content in particular, it is about speed of delivery,
Hmm.
period, story, because short form content is perishable. If it's not available in real time or near real time, the value diminishes. That Clio award we talked about, the NHL, a big part of that, what was the success of the program, they used AI to get content to the players in social media heads immediately, so that content would be used. And what you see in the case study is like the amount of assets shared on a weekly basis, the amount of players leveraging content like multiple times a week. Like if you get an email or a text or a Slack with a video 3 days after it happened, who gives a crap, right? Not really worth, like, and if you're someone like in the NHL as an example, if you're not, overly comfortable just pushing out your highlights, well, that happened 3 days ago. Like it's not like big
Right.
news. So
Right.
but keeping this on point, the speed of delivery is really where the magic is, because that's where the fan engagement happens. And what you see is that these kind of authentic clips on social channels, we see it all across all our leagues, they have about a 7 to 10 times, like 10x engagement rate, because it's not just a highlight the next day, it is something that is happening right now. And whether it drives tune in or whether it drives a live stream on Twitter, or it's just something that someone sees, likes, and reshares, there's a connection to it.
And it's totally changed the expectation of what fans want. And I'm laughing a little bit because I'm thinking about just yesterday. I mean, we're recording this the day after the England and Netherlands match in the Euro 24, when England scored a goal in the last minute of the game in order to go up 2-1 and win the match versus the Netherlands. And I saw an alert come up on my phone, and I went to the internet immediately and was embarrassingly irritated that I couldn't find the clip within the first 3 minutes of my search for it. But
Yeah,
that's the way our brains are wired now, right?
100%.
And as much as I would have loved to sit down and watch the game,
Yeah.
I got podcasts and e-recording and stuff like that. So, it takes me away from my passion projects. But that's where we are right now. And so I see what you're saying about, I love the comment about short form content being a perishable commodity. So
Yeah.
that quick delivery and what Greenfly is helping activate for companies using AI as it comes forward is really where the rubber hits the road here.
Can I tell you a little bit about the AI technology piece?
Go.
I don't want to bore you senseless, but it's interesting, right?
Should I pull up the chair? Everybody in the audience, just
Uh,
pull up your chair. Uncle
yeah, it's
Mark is going to walk us
super,
through a technology
super
discussion.
interesting. No, but
Make it lively, Mark.
when we picked this company and we had made the decision that this was the best in class
Yeah.
AI for sports, the skeptic in me was like, okay, come on, like that's the sales pitch, but what is that rooted in? What makes it better than anything else? Most AI, when you think about AI, it is facial recognition, right? They're
Right.
using biometric data, it's facial recognition, and it ranges from crappy to good.
Yep.
When we think about AI, we've really got like four main pillars, where it does start with facial recognition. Then you layer in jersey and roster identification. So you're looking at name on the back, you're looking at number, you're looking at the team logo and colors. That moves into brand identification. So the ability to identify Adidas or Nike or Chevy. So we can bring in kind of that sponsor angle to part of the thing. And then the final piece we call scene detection, the ability to train our AI to understand that's a touchdown, that's a slam dunk, that is a tunnel walk, that is an arrival. So I give you that long technical example to bring to an article that ran this week that I happen to see on social about the WNBA's arrival social that's going off, like it's off the charts. That's done through Greenfly, where they're identifying this. The AI identifies the arrival. That's kind of the concept. So you've got all these and WNBA and NBA players showing up in these great outfits, and it's being repurposed in real time in pictures and images from the arrival and tunnel walk. That's kind of like it allows when you think about like if you're the WNBA or the NBA or MLB. I want to do something around the home run derby. I want to do something around the buses coming in. I want to do something around tailgating in the parking lot. We can help sort that content in a way that can be used in a variety of different both fan engagement and commercial opportunities.
I'm laughing because I'm assuming there has to be one or two guys listening, people who are in sports, who spent their formative years going through hours and hours of tape,
Unbelievable. Yeah.
like literally marking like home run, like like a grease pencil on
Yeah.
the tape. They're absolutely crying right now because there's
Yeah.
a whole automated system to be able to do it. And I think the other thing that brings up 10 years ago, like the idea that the tunnel walk would be marketable content or
Yeah.
interesting content, it just makes you roll your eyes. Like if somebody had pitched that to you, you'd be like, what are you talking about? But it goes back to the other part of the conversation we're talking about. Look, they're always looking for the next thing. How do we take this next thing and make it interesting and get people behind the scenes? It's a perfect
Yeah.
example of that.
That when I said they were good and bad, like the examples of like the media mind, like moving from traditional to kind of like modern thinking or even the sports media. When you think of that tunnel walk example, and you've got a smart, savvy, commercial team. Well, now having a signage in the tunnel that
Yeah,
would normally not be picked up in broadcast, but
right.
now has become part of
A
the
commodity.
magic, right? Like now all of a sudden, like you're walking by, you know, American Express for that tunnel walk, or and I think
And the
that
designers getting involved just to outfit the athletes as they do that kind of thing. I mean, it's opened up a whole new realms. Now, we've talked about the technology, but I want to circle back to the first part of the conversation because you do have this incredible sales background. And I'm interested in your perspective about leading sales efforts for a company that's specifically focused on sports. So I think I know the answer. I think where you know where you're going to go, but I want to think like how does it differ from selling in other verticals, right? And what skills do you have that you developed along the way? Did you find we're going to be like, oh, thank God I experienced this because as I apply it to sports in particular, it's particularly valuable.
Well, it actually that it kind of goes back to the opening of this
Yeah.
conversation about what I learned at iHeartMedia, listening to the customer. I think sports is a vertical. You've got you've got passionate career sports professionals, this small community of people who have come up the ranks and have worked for a very long time at a variety of different organizations, and everyone kind of knows everybody.
Mm-hmm.
When I think about my best sellers in this space, you've got to have people that are smart. You've got to have people that are fans. You've got to have people that are passionate about what we do as it relates to the sports that we're selling into. You've got to be able to ask questions and listen. But I think the biggest thing is you cannot successfully sell into sports by over promising and under delivering. And I think in technology in particular, I think that it's very easy to say we do everything, right? Like these are the 53 things that we do, but if you really focus in on the 7 to 10 things you actually do better than anyone else, and you don't overpromise, and you focus on delivering what you're going to say you're going to do, that's the key to success. Because ironically, we had a meeting today with a technology company, and the person we were meeting is former MLB. So we were reminiscing with him about the people we met with at Major League Baseball, and it's just that small community where, you say the wrong thing, you don't deliver, you underpromise, or you overpromise and under deliver, you're probably dead in the water,
It
right?
is the biggest, smallest industry
Right.
that I can think of, right? Everybody's 2 degrees of separation.
Right.
Mark Keaney, he's Chief Revenue Officer of Greenfly. This is a particularly fascinating discussion, and I really appreciate you spending the time with us today. But before I let you go, I got to put you in the lightning round.
Got it.
You don't know what's about to happen. I'm glad you're in the hotel room right now because after the trauma of this experience, just lay down and cool out for a little while.
Yeah,
So, Mark Keaney, you ready for this?
I am.
All right, let's do this thing. As has been alluded to over the course of this conversation, you're a big fan. You're a Boston sports fan. You're a Pats, C's, B's, and Sox guy. As am I. So please take a moment and acknowledge that there is no better sports town than Boston.
Titletown, USA.
I mean, really? I mean, you can't. Who else would even come close to second? I mean, listeners, I realize you're all tuning out right now, but don't care. There is no better place in the world for it. Best sports town in the country.
100%.
You live in Marblehead, Massachusetts.
That is correct.
Please,
American Navy.
Birthplace of the American Navy. Please pronounce your hometown in your best Boston accent.
Can I swear?
Of course you can swear.
I live in fucking Marblehead. Yeah, it's funny.
How's the pocket in Marblehead these days? That used to be awful.
Growing up with the name Mark in Boston, I
Mac.
had to really work on that because when my mom would call my college roommates, we had a phone, so they would answer, "Hey Mac, it's your mother." So I slowly worked my way out of saying Mark or Mac, and I refer to myself as Mark.
Well, of course you did. Yeah, Macky Mac. That's really where it gets to be a problem. You apparently enjoy a good round of golf. What course is on the top of your bucket list?
Augusta National.
All right, yeah. Hard not to have that one be up on the top there.
I think it's a country club once a year as a guest of a kid who's a member there, which is embarrassing. I literally go once a year with my oldest kid's best friend is a member at the country club. So once a year I get an obligatory round. It's amazing.
Well, yeah. You got to get it any way you can. I mean, no, there's no pride.
Exactly right.
All right, last but not least, please describe the 7 a.m. project.
So I have been sober now for 12 years, and I'm very proud of that. And
congratulations.
Thank you. Early in my business life, it never really affected my life in an enormously negative way, except I spent most of my mornings with a hangover, and I would ease into my mornings. And when I got sober, I started to run every day. And so I wake up every morning at 5 a.m. I go for my morning run, and at 7 a.m. I post a picture of really the sunrise from wherever I am. So Central Park this morning. And it's just that reminder that having great healthy routines in your life is much better than what my prior alternative was. So that is the 7 a.m. project. Thanks for seeing that.
Just awesome. Mark Keaney, Chief Revenue Officer of Greenfly. Mark, can't thank you enough for spending the time today.
I appreciate it. Great conversation.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the One-on-One Sports Business Conversations podcast. If you enjoyed it, we always appreciate a subscribe, share, comment, or like. And don't forget, you can always find past episodes at abcpartners.com/podcast. This podcast is written, produced, edited, and hosted by Dave Almy. And theme music was composed by Scott Holmes.